I am going with the Indianapolis Colts plus 5.5 now at FanDuel against the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's down to 5.5 now.
Yeah. First, let me say this: if you can buy up to the 6, I would buy it to -120. I got it at 7. When I initially looked at this game, it's like, all right, this is the spot that you want the Colts. Like, we were on fading them last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Horrible spot for them. Everyone was hurt, which made it, I think that line got down to 3. But now this is the Colts, home opener, first of all. So we haven't even seen them play at home yet. And I think that's significant because you talked about overreaction week. And I think that, yes, the Colts have obviously shit the bed. Let's not make any bones about it. But we know teams play better at home, and we have not seen them, in their own environment yet. And so I think we're still, or the general public is still getting a little too down on the Colts. And I think that's why that line was at 7 until probably a few hours ago, or, at most, because it's dropping pretty quick now as we record this on Wednesday night. But you look at the Colts, they're getting Pittman back and Pierce back, so they should have more receivers this week. Both of them return to practice Wednesday. Then you look at the kind of natural human element of this game. Mentioned the home opener already.
Shaq Leonard too, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't trust. I don't trust that he's a real person. He's like a Dory Jackson a couple years ago. It's like until he actually sets foot on the field, he's ruled out. But yeah, if he plays, that's great as well. I think that's probably one of the reasons the line is coming down. We're starting to get practice reports on Wednesday. But look at week 3 historically. Winless home teams entering week 3 facing a visiting team with at least one win, 31-19-2 against the spread. That is 62%. Then you have week 3 underdogs with at least one against the spread loss. So they're not undefeated against the spread, which obviously the Colts are 0-2. That opened under a touchdown, 89-54-2, 64%. And more importantly, and this is where you come to overreactions, not even specifically to week 3, but just in general, underdogs coming off a game in which they were shut out, going up against the favorite the next week, as long as the favorite's not coming off a bye, 41-21-3, 66% against the spread since 2005, beating the spread by nearly 3 points per game. And then you look at a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, it's Andy Reid. He's got extra time to prepare. They had a Thursday game. That actually does not hold up in this spot. So I went and looked at
6-9 against the spread.
Yeah, I actually have 7-10 against the spread on 9 to 13 days of rest. So
I did 9 to 11.
Okay. Yeah. So same idea, but 5-7 specifically on exactly 10 days of rest, which this is Thursday night game to a Sunday, and failing to cover the spread by an average of 2.4 points per game. So whatever you thought about that narrative, because I've seen it kind of floated, and I read various picks articles and just, things in the media. I've seen that floated, that narrative. That just get that out of your head. That's not really something that happens in this kind of spot. But I do think it's interesting that the Colts catching more than a field goal under Frank Reich, 9-3-1 against the spread. So this is generally the spot you want to target the Colts. Like you kind of have the Colts, a handle on the Colts. You want to fade them against Jacksonville, and you want to back them when everyone gets really down on them. And one of those covers from Reich getting more than a field goal was an outright upset of the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead as a double-digit underdog. They came in there, they got after Mahomes, and they ended up winning that game. And in this one, you look at the Chiefs. I'm not that impressed by the Chiefs this year. They played Arizona with no defense. I do like
all the backups in Arizona. It was a meaningless game.
Right. It was like a glorified scrimmage. Okay. Yeah. Week 2, they get gifted a win by Gerald Everett. Okay, fine. But you look at that offense without Tyreek Hill, and I still think some of the concerns that we had about it are legitimate. Like without that, just the threat of the deep ball, Mahomes is having to work a lot more for any type of explosive play. Guys just aren't breaking open as quickly. Like Mahomes is taking some sacks at certain times where it's just like, it's those Aaron Rodgers sacks from week 1. It's just like no one's open. The play to Watson was a great play by Mahomes. He's going to make some of those, but I think it's important because remember, this is still a Gus Bradley defense. And this is why this is always going to be a hold your nose pick, because Gus Bradley, at one point, it seemed like he had the blueprint against Mahomes when he was with the Chargers. And then he goes to the Raiders and, I guess the personnel isn't as good. And Mahomes just ate him up last year in the 2 games. But now, if Gus Bradley is going to be stubborn and still play his single high, well, you don't have Tyreek Hill. So you don't have that same threat against, you're not tailor-made as an offense to beat this defense anymore. Now your offense is tailor-made to beat the 2 high shells, and not that they're having a ton of success or going to have a ton of success doing that at all times, but I think that's an important distinction as well, because that's another narrative I've seen kind of floated out there is that, well, they're going up against this Gus Bradley defense, it's over. And I don't think that's exactly the case. I think you're going to get just a massive effort from the Colts in their home stadium. I think they're going to get after Mahomes. I think you're going to see them punch the Chiefs in the mouth with Jonathan Taylor. The Chiefs, they faced the Cardinals and then they faced, the Chargers. Even though Eckler is great, they don't really have a power running game either. So, I think this is just, it sounds kind of cliche, but I think this is going to be a game where the Chiefs the Colts get real physical, punch them in the mouth, play desperate football, get the crowd going early, and stay in this game. And wouldn't even be surprised to see them pull off a victory in this spot, because that's the NFL. And the teams you're down on the most one week are going to surprise you the next week. So give me the Colts plus 5.5.
Yeah, this would have been number 1. I was pissed when you took it. Vintage spot. I took 7 when it popped out there as well. If you're at 5.5 now, wait. Maybe you can get some public money. The whole world will be on the Chiefs here. But yeah, it's overreaction week. Teams are never as bad as they look. Plus, the Colts are they've been playing without receivers, been playing without their best defensive player. Maybe, finally, receivers come back to play the Chiefs. Chiefs play the Cardinals without all their receivers and entire defense. They play the Chargers without Keenan Allen. But the Chiefs I was thoroughly unimpressed with the Chiefs. You can't even look at their numbers and tell without watching that game how bad they were. Mahomes throws 2 picks that are dropped, wide open drops. And then Mahomes throws 2 other picks that were called back on brutal.
What was that, bro?
One was offensive pass interference, and he just threw up a duck. He looked awful. And so I'm hoping that, Jonathan Taylor they should control the line of scrimmage here and just efficiently control the clock, move up and down the field. You're going to get a spirited effort here. Teams that start out 0-2 straight up and against the spread, by the way, 45-28 against the spread since 2003. That's 62%. And how about home dogs catching 7+ coming home in week 3? So they were on the road after an 0-2 start. It's only happened 4 times. They're 4-0 against the spread. All 4 teams should have won outright, catching a touchdown or more. 6, if you do 6, it's the same thing. Ravens beat the Lions on a 66-yard field goal that shouldn't have happened last year. Justin Tucker also beat the Browns on a last second field goal like 8 years ago. The Lions beat the Patriots. Remember that game? Patricia and they were catching 8, and the Bears beat the Steelers when catching 8. These teams are usually not as bad as they look. You'll get the best effort from the Colts here, and the Chiefs are just kind of it's just like, I think people are overvaluing their start when they easily, the Chargers should have won that game, and then they play all of the Cardinals backups. And we talked about we squashed that Andy Reid narrative. How about this? We talked about this last year. Teams off a shutout loss as 3-point plus underdogs in non-division games, 51-14-3, 78%. Since 1990, 51-14-3 off a shutout, catching 3+. How about so I could go on and on here, but it's just a play where you don't overreact. This line was 3. I would have thought it would have been 3 before the year, maybe less depending on how these teams started. The look ahead was just 3.5, and now you were getting up to 5.5, 6 in a classic spot. I think the Colts do match up well. Outside of the Bradley defense is still a little bit concerning, but
it is.
You mentioned that game in 2019 when the Chiefs were upset by the Colts Frank Reich was the head coach. Eberflus was the defensive coordinator. Heavy zone defense. They went in that day and played nothing but man, and it was a masterclass defensive game plan, and the Chiefs had no idea what to do. So I'm hoping Reich hinted at the end of in his press earlier this week that they're going to be making changes. Early downs, they've been showing a lot more quarters. So I think that you'll see some different looks here. Getting Leonard back is everything in the middle for that defense. And he practiced in full last week. He was practicing in full last week. So I expect a full workload. They're 0-2. It's basically like your season starts slow. I mean, although you're in a shitty division, but it's as close to a must win as you can get. So yeah, you'll see a max effort here from the Colts. And by the way, how about Patrick Mahomes is not the guy you want to be backing as a 7+ point favorite throughout his career. I mean, we went through, I don't know, 10, 15, we went through 2 years where he could never cover. By the way, he's 10, 15-1 against the spread as a favorite 7+. So Butker might not play. So you might have some kicking woes for the Chiefs as well. And yeah, it's just a spot. It's vintage week 3 spot. Don't overreact. We're taking the Colts.